Hello and welcome to Health, Healing, and the Spirit, the health education series that's brought to you by New Life Church in partnership with the Heal Collaborative and Amgen. My name is Sabrina Botts, and I am so pleased to be here to serve as your moderator and host for today's program. You know, Health, Healing, and the Spirit is specifically designed to deal with health topics that are relevant for communities of color. We want to provide you education, information, and conversation. Well, today's topic is breast cancer. For those of you that are here in the U.S., you know that traditionally the month of October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So we wanted to lend our voice to the space of being a trusted resource for our community on this topic. Breast cancer is the most common cancer that women face in this country. Yet, the way it appears in terms of how it develops and those that die from it show up differently for communities of color. This concept is something that in the medical field we refer to as a disparity. It's this phenomena that many diseases show up differently in people of color than they do when compared to the white race. And so today we have a content expert who's going to give us some information on why that happens if possible. We also want to bring to the table not just a content expert, but we want to have a discussion with a panel of women who have decided to share with us their stories. So if you don't mind, let's pray together and then we'll get started. So Father, I thank you so much, first for the privilege to pray. I thank you for this topic and for this opportunity that we can come together as a faith community to talk about these things that affect us as a community. Would you please be a part of this conversation today? Allow our hearts to be at one, and that our audience will be able to learn and be better off because we were here today. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, as I mentioned, we do have a content expert. It's Dr. Yara Robertson. Dr. Robertson hails from the great state of Arkansas, but for the last 9 years, she has been a physician here in the city of Atlanta, particularly in Lithonia. She is fellowship trained and board certified as a breast surgical oncologist. One of the things I have loved learning about Dr. Robertson is that not only is she an excellent clinician, she also is a person who loves her community. Her bio states that she is a champion to help eliminate these healthcare disparities. The other thing that you'll find Dr. Robertson doing when she's not in the clinic with her patients, you'll see her in the community teaching and educating others, much like she's going to do for us today, but also providing services free of charge to make sure that women of color who are without insurance also has access. So ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Dr. Yara Robertson.
Thank you, New Life, for having me this morning. It's conversations like these that help get to our community to really get the word out about disparities with breast cancer. So I titled this, Our Breasts Matter. I want to make sure we know there's nothing to disclose. I am not endorsing any specific brands. And also, this is not to be used in place of a medical consultation. If you have an issue, you need to see your doctor. Don't say, Dr. Robertson told me this via a New Life talk. So some facts and figures about breast cancer. Breast cancer affects 1 in 8 women over their lifetime, so 12%. In 2020, it's estimated we'll have close to 280,000 new invasive cases. And we'll have almost 49,000 new cases of non-invasive breast cancer. But even though we have diagnosis of invasive breast cancer, the good news is there'll be only about 42,000 deaths. And the death rates have been going down since 1989. We have 3.5 million breast cancer survivors, and we think this is due to earlier detection, and we have better treatments for our breast cancer patients. One of the first topics I want to talk about is to check or not to check your breast, because there has been a bit of controversy on whether women should be doing breast exams anymore. Not just so much breast exams for themselves, but also seeing clinicians like me. So what the experts say. Breast self-exams, we used to tell people do once a month, same time of the month, 5 days after your cycle, or if you have gone through menopause, maybe the same date every month. What the experts were telling us now is that they have done multiple studies, and the studies, when you combine everything, said it did not have a difference in breast cancer survival, and women have more false positive results. That meant if you felt something, you came in to see me, and then there was nothing there. I think that's all a bunch of hogwash, okay? I'm letting you know that right now. I don't believe in that. What I tell my patients is to do breast self-awareness. Now, to be politically correct, I'm not saying do a breast exam, but that includes a breast exam. So breast self-awareness is making sure you know what is normal for you. How your breasts normally feel. Do you feel a lump in the breast? You know, I tell people just get familiar with how your breasts feel because I may only see you once a year. However, you know your breast every day. So if there's a change, you can tell a clinician, hey, I feel something different in my breast. The main thing is it's free, there's no copay, and you're not waiting in a cold exam room for me naked, okay? So what you need to look for, there are certain things I want to stress that not everybody has the same symptoms of breast cancer. Most often people come in with no symptoms of breast cancer, it's just found on a mammogram. But if you find a new lump in the breast, if you find a lump underneath your arm, we call the armpit or the axilla. If your breast is thickened, like a poudre or orange peel, that's not normal. If you have dimpling, if you have redness of the skin, if your nipple looks like it's being retracted inward, that could be a lump or a mass pulling that nipple in. That's not normal. If you're having discharge, now milk is physiologic. We don't really worry about milk. But if you're having unilateral one breast or spontaneous bloody discharge or clear discharge, that needs to be evaluated. And persistent pain. Pain is not usually a sign of breast cancer, but a persistent pain needs to be evaluated by a doctor so that we can make sure there's nothing else going on. I want to stress that just because you feel something in the breast does not mean it's a cancer. 80% of lumps that we find in the breast are non-cancerous. So you have a chance of finding a cyst, which are fluid-filled pockets that sometimes we drain fluid out of because it hurts. Fibroadenomas are non-cancerous tumors we find in teenagers. You can have infections. Some people just have lumpy breast tissue because that's the way their breast was made up. And of course, the least likely thing is a tumor or cancer. Women will come in and say, I don't touch my breast, I don't want to look at my breast. That's crazy. You need to get to know how your breasts feel. And I don't like it when women come in and say, ignorance is bliss. If I don't feel it, it ain't there. That ain't true. Make sure you check your breast. I don't care what the experts say, check your breast, or I'm coming after you. Mammograms. Look, mammograms are still the FDA-proven treatment for early detection of breast cancer. We still recommend the American Congress of Obstetrics and Gynecologists, American College of Radiologists, Society of Breast Imagers to get your mammogram starting at age 40. Since the implementation of screening mammograms, we have seen a decrease in breast cancer rates. Also, for screening women between the ages of 40 and 84, we have shown a almost 40% mortality reduction. They save lives. The reason why I'm harping on this is because in 2009, the United States Preventative Task Force told women, stop getting your mammograms once you hit 74 or 75. Don't get your mammogram till you're age 50 and skip every other year. Now, you know how we are as African Americans. We take care of everybody else. So if you tell me I don't have to get my mammogram to age 50, I may not go to 55, or I may not go at all. I may skip 5 years. These studies that tell us to get our mammogram starting at age 50 did not include Hispanic and African American women. We still get our breast cancers younger than our white counterparts, and we present with more aggressive cancers. We still tell people, if you come to my practice, age 40, start getting your mammogram. Don't skip years, and there's no magic number to stopping your mammogram. My grandmother got breast cancer when she was 85 from a screening mammogram. Her doctor told her she was too old to be treated. She got a new doctor, and she's still living at 94, okay? So my problems with the guidelines, they don't include us. We don't fit the average profile. So if you have a physician that is not getting your mammogram when you hit 40, you need to go find a physician that will allow you to get your mammogram starting at age 40. This is not a one-size-fits-all for these guidelines. So I'm stressing, please get your screening mammogram starting at age 40. As an aside, if you have a family history of breast cancer earlier, meaning your mom may have had breast cancer at 45, we typically recommend that you start getting your mammograms 10 years earlier than when your first-degree relative had it, like a mother or sister. So if your mother had breast cancer at 45, you should start getting your mammograms ideally at 35. So some risk factors for breast cancer. There are factors that we cannot prevent. Getting female, and getting older are the two main risk factors for developing breast cancers. But as you can see here, there's a host of things that we can't prevent. We can't control when we start our cycles. We can't control our race. We can't control our family history or personal history. And there are some lifestyle risks as well. Smoking, physical inactivity, eating bad, being overweight, not breastfeeding, alcohol use, all these things can increase your risk for breast cancer. However, we don't have an exact way of knowing what causes breast cancer. Everybody's different. So we tell people that this is a guideline, but this is not all inclusive. So you can't prevent breast cancer. There's no magic diet to prevent breast cancer. There's no magic pill. But like I said, you can reduce your risk. Maintaining a healthy weight, not smoking, making sure you're active, alcohol use. Now, we all saints up in here, so we shouldn't be drinking anyway. But for those that may still drink, surgeons say you can have 1 drink of alcohol a day. The oncologist wants you doing only 3 alcoholic drinks a week. So what about black women? Black women and white men are diagnosed with breast cancer at the same rate because people think that black women get it more often than white women. That's not true. But we are 40% more likely to die from our breast cancer. We have the highest breast cancer death rate, and we also get it younger than our white counterparts. And no matter what age we are, even if we get diagnosed at 35 and a white woman's 35, we're more likely to die from that breast cancer. And why? Scientists really don't know why. We say women come in at more advanced stages. Sometimes that's due to us not getting treated, but also people not really taking our concerns serious. We have other comorbidities, meaning we may be obese, hypertension, diabetic, like I talked about, the unhealthy lifestyles. Tumor characteristics that are less favorable to treatment. The way to think about that is, I'm going to talk about a breast cancer that is a little bit more aggressive that is found in the African American community, and maybe our treatment of that cancer may not be as effective as in a white woman. Some of us have lack of access to high quality cancer treatment, and that means maybe you didn't know when you were diagnosed you could see an actual breast surgeon, or maybe you didn't know you could go to a cancer institute to be treated. Sometimes people aren't given that option. You just told you have breast cancer and you get sent wherever. You don't ask for a second opinion. You don't advocate for yourself. We are disproportionately represented in clinical trials, and I'll go over that in a little bit. Some of us don't adhere to our treatment. We are hard-headed. Some of us don't have insurance. There are environmental factors. When people are in places of poverty, we have more pollutants or contaminants in our neighborhoods and in our environment. Stressors, let's just be fair. It's stressful to be a black woman in America. And they are doing some research on how stress may cause inflammation, which could impair your cancer fighting cells. And of course, we have genetic factors that cause breast cancer. In 2016, Avon did a study looking at the 50 largest cities in America. And Atlanta topped the list. We didn't top the list for a good thing. We topped the list for a bad thing. Black women in Atlanta were 2 times as likely to die from breast cancer within 5 years of being diagnosed of breast cancer compared to white women, and for the reasons that I just talked about on the previous slide. And we don't want to be known for that list. We are actively doing things here in the city of Atlanta to help those disparities. So the first breast cancer I really want to talk about is triple negative breast cancer. Now, the way to explain this, triple negative breast cancer means that it doesn't express genes that we typically look for breast cancer. Most breast cancers that I treat respond to estrogen and progesterone. These are 2 hormones we have in our body. We also look for a lesser known growth factor called HER2/neu, and I'm sorry, I can't name it anything simpler because that's what it's named. Let's talk about HER2/neu right quick. HER2/neu is found on most breast cells, but when you have an overproduction of it, too much of it, it's an aggressive cancer. And so we have a medicine that we target to treat that breast cancer. Most of the breast cancers I treat are estrogen positive and progesterone positive. That means if you think about this breast cancer cell here, it's like a car. And they have these little receptors are called seats, car seats. So the estrogen and progesterone come along, buckle themselves in the car seat and drive the tumor. People, how is that a good thing? Well, I like to see that breast cancer over triple negative because I know once I do my surgery, that person may not need to have actual chemotherapy. There are tests that we do to see if they need chemo, and then we may be able to give them an anti-hormone, which is a hormone blocker. So that medicine comes in, sits in the seat, and keeps the estrogen off of the tumor from making it grow. Those are the most common breast cancers that we treat. But then look at this particular cancer cell here. This is a triple negative breast cancer. Triple-negative breast cancers don't have those car seats. So that means hormones like estrogen and progesterone cannot sit there and make it grow. So people will go, well, that's a good thing, right? Well, it's not really a good thing when I can't give you a pill to treat your breast cancer. So these women, even if I do surgery on them, they still have to get systemic therapy, which means I have to give them chemotherapy to make sure the rest of their body is protected from breast cancer. It's only 15 to 20% of diagnoses of breast cancer. It's more common in Hispanic and African American women, and it's typically found in younger women. The rate of recurrence, meaning the chances of it coming back within 5 years, is higher. It is a more aggressive cancer than the hormone-sensitive cancers I just talked about. And the problem is, because they're more aggressive, they have a poorer prognosis, and, sometimes they don't respond as well to therapy. Even if it's a small cancer, 5 millimeters, we still give them chemotherapy for this particular cancer. And so if it's a very large cancer, sometimes we give chemo before we even do surgery on them. But the good news about triple negative, two things I want to say, because it's not a great cancer to have, but I don't want you thinking if you have it, you're not going to survive. Triple negative cancers have multiple subsets, and each subset acts differently. Some are very aggressive and some respond very well to treatment. So just because you have triple negative breast cancer does not mean you won't get adequate treatment. The other thing is, after you hit 5 years, you are less likely to have your cancer come back than someone who is hormone sensitive or who presented with hormone sensitive breast cancer. Now, although it is twice as likely to be in an African American woman over a white woman, I want to stress that is not the most common breast cancer that we have. Just like white women, we show up with hormone-sensitive breast cancers, the ones that respond to estrogen and progesterone. Because for some reason we have this myth that we only get triple-negative breast cancer. That is not true. 70% of women get hormone-sensitive breast cancer. The problem with that is, we should be doing fine. If we have the same cancers as white women, we should be able to take that pill and still live. But for those reasons I talked about, even with having hormone-sensitive breast cancer, sometimes we don't do as well. The next thing I want to talk about is discussing the fact we have breast cancers in our family. You don't know how many times I've had patients diagnosed with breast cancer that they didn't know anybody in their family had breast cancer, because in the African American community, it is still taboo to talk about cancer. They usually will whisper it, I have cancer, or I don't claim it. If I don't say it, I don't claim it, I don't have it. Well, that don't mean you ain't gonna get it, okay? Breast cancer is here. Now, we can pray about it, you can pray it away, but you still need to discuss it. You need to have these discussions. And the reason is, if you know you have a strong family history of breast cancer, I can bring you in earlier to start screening you earlier. You need to know about your personal risk. And also, we may need to genetically test you. I might need to see if there's something in your DNA causing you to have breast cancer, so we can either intervene before you develop it or start following you more closely. So what is a genetic mutation? And unlike Hollywood, they call it the Angelina Jolie effect. Angelina Jolie did not come up with genetic mutations. Everybody heard that she had something abnormal in her DNA. She removed her breast and ovaries to prevent her risk for developing breast and ovarian cancer. What it is it's a way that these are certain mechanisms that are supposed to protect you for developing breast cancer. And so genes normally go around, they grow. The way I explain it is, think of the cells in a factory. They're doing their job, working. And they have a supervisor that comes along and blows a whistle to say, stop growing, stop, we're done. Something happens to that supervisor, maybe it falls asleep. That's a tumor suppressor gene. That means it's not doing its job, it's not stopping those tumor cells from growing. So if the supervisor is asleep, the cells go, hey, let me keep on growing. So there's some of us that have these things in our systems that are making us grow cancers. And so what I hear often is, if I don't have this mutation or if I don't have anything in my DNA, I don't have to worry about breast cancer. Let me stress again that most breast cancers occur because we don't know. They don't have a genetic mutation. 90% of breast cancers come because we're female and we're older, and those other risk factors I talked about earlier. Now, there are 10% of breast cancers caused by genetic mutations, and there are a host of mutations. It's just not the BRCA1 and 2 genes that we always hear about. But we have all these other genes here too. They overlap with different cancers. Sometimes you may not even have a breast cancer gene. It may cause pancreatic, colon, prostate cancer, thyroid cancer. So just because you have a genetic mutation, it doesn't mean you're going to develop breast cancer. However, women who have the BRCA1 and 2 genes have a 5 times the normal risk of developing breast cancer, depending upon which gene they have. BRCA1 and 2 have separate percentage points. And they have a 10 to 30% chance, or 10 to 30 times normal than the average person developing ovarian cancer. And so BRCA1 can be up to 72% of developing breast cancer. BRCA2 can be up to 69% of developing breast cancer by age 80. And compare that to when normal women develop breast cancer, only 12% over their lifetime. So that's a big risk for developing breast cancer. Now, I'm not going to go through all of who should be tested, but if you have a family history of a genetic mutation, you need to get tested. If you're an Ashkenazi Jew, they have a higher rate of having BRCA1 and 2 genes. They usually are tested. If you present with breast cancer early in life, like 45, even less than 50, we talk about getting genetic testing because breast cancer is typically a cancer of older women. If you have a lot of family members with breast cancer, if a person comes in and starts talking about all these people with pancreatic cancer, breast cancers, ovarian cancer, that's a red flag to me. And genetic testing only includes just me taking a little bit of blood or either taking saliva from you. It's not really that invasive. Anybody with a triple negative breast cancer less than age 60 needs to be genetically tested. And if you have a family history of a male breast cancer or if you are a male with breast cancer, you need to be tested. But what we have found that when Black women and white women are not getting tested at the same rates. There is actually a study that was done in 2016 that said that there's unequal distribution or there's disparities in BRCA1 and 2 testing, and they really don't know why. I have my suspicion it's a bias that we just don't mention it to Black women. When a young Black woman comes in with breast cancer, that's the first thing that's on my mind. How did you get this breast cancer? What's your family history? And I'm testing them. But even if you see an oncologist or a surgeon, no matter who you saw, the women still weren't getting tested. And that's an issue because if you have a genetic mutation, there are different things that I do with you. I may go ahead and recommend if you have breast cancer that we need to remove both breasts, especially the one that didn't have breast cancer prophylactically. But you may not want to remove that breast. You may not want to remove your ovaries, but there are different tests that I do for women who have genetic mutations. And if we don't know about it, we can't do those tests. So we have to ensure that we are being equitable in how we distribute genetic testing. I do want to talk really quickly about male breast cancer because it does happen in men, because I know some men may be watching this. Your lifetime risk is 1 in 883, and there's about 2,620 new cases that are going to be diagnosed in 2020. I put Matthew Knowles here because he was diagnosed with breast cancer last year. He's a 1-year survivor. He has a genetic mutation, which means he has the BRCA mutation. So he has a 50% chance he can pass it on to either Beyonce or Solange. So I'm hoping that they are being tested or they are being followed very closely because they are at high risk for developing breast cancer. So just something really quickly, in order for us to address and reduce disparities in breast cancer, it's going to take a lot of us to work together to make sure this happens. We have to make sure the patient journey is good. We have to make sure there's improved care coordination from the time they've been diagnosed with breast cancer to the time they come see a surgeon needs to be an improved time. Because like I told you, Black women come in with more advanced cancers, and some of that's because there's a delay between the time they got diagnosed and the time they get treated. We need to make sure they have good access to mammography. We have to make sure that genetic counseling and testing are important. So all of these things are what we need to do to make sure that Black women and rural women or women of all races really are living from breast cancer. Very quickly, I want to talk about breast cancer and bone health because there have been numerous studies that have been looking at vitamin D levels and the risk of breast cancer. Now, although we have found that low levels of vitamin D can increase breast cancer risks and that less levels are less protective, there are some studies that don't show that. However, the way this kind of works is calcitriol is the active form of vitamin D3. And calcitriol keeps this enzyme from degrading vitamin D. And what that means is, I'm not going to go through this. You don't have to learn this CYP24A1, but basically it's like a little Pac-Man. It goes around and it eats up vitamin D. Vitamin D is protective against breast cancer, and you find this little Pac-Man in like colon, breast, ovarian, and lung cancers. And when there's too much of this or an overexpression of this little enzyme that's breaking down vitamin D, it impairs tumor activity. So you can kind of see the relationship between vitamin D and breast cancer. But there isn't enough evidence yet to link high levels of vitamin D to a decreased risk of breast cancer. And I'm stressing that because women will come in taking these mega doses of vitamin D trying to prevent breast cancer, but they're not doing anything else I asked them to do. You don't need to be smoking, you need to be exercising, limiting your alcohol intake, making sure that you are being healthy. Vitamin D is just one part of that equation. Healthy bones are important for breast cancer survivors because breast cancer can sometimes go to the bones and cause metastatic disease. So we want them to have good vitamin D levels and healthy bones, but this will not prevent you from getting breast cancer, okay? Something I want to stress, having breast cancer is not a death sentence. We have multiple ways to treat breast cancer. Even if you come in with metastatic or stage 4 triple negative breast cancer, we have newer and newer medications that help treat. No, we may not be able to cure you of stage 4 cancer, but we can turn it into a chronic condition like hypertension or diabetes. I don't want women diagnosed with cancers to not go get treatment because they're afraid they're not going to survive. You have to be an advocate. You have to have survivor idea in your head if you want to survive. There's individualized breast cancer treatments. Every treatment is different. I always say, this is not your mama and them's cancer. And I say that because people will come in, well, my mama had this, my mama had that, oh, my mama had radiation. Look, we talking about your cancer, not your mama's cancer. Every cancer is different. Just because you had a mastectomy doesn't mean your sister's gonna have to have a mastectomy. Sometimes I can keep a portion of your breast. Just because you had radiation therapy doesn't mean she's gonna get radiation therapy. I'll take the radiation, but I don't want that chemo. That's not how it works. We do individualized treatment. What we need to do for your cancer is based upon your cancer and your cancer alone. And I put this slide up here because look at all the different breast cancers. This is invasive cancer, which is the most common cancer that I treat, which is cancer that gets out of the milk duct into the breast tissue. That's the most common cancer. Stage 0 breast cancer is a cancer that is typically found on mammograms first. We find it in like little spots or calcifications. Though that's a stage 0 breast cancer, it doesn't go anywhere. It's not an aggressive breast cancer. And then we have all these other types of invasive cancer. So every cancer is different. I just want to stress that. And just quickly about the surgical treatment, I didn't want to put actual pictures of patients up here because this is a church and I'm trying to be politically correct and PC. However, I just want you to see that there are multiple ways to treat breast cancer. Some women can keep their breasts. Some women we have to remove the breast. Some women we can keep the breast and then we can remove the breast and then we can rebuild the breast. Some women we can keep the nipples on. Some women we have to take the nipples. Some women have to get a lot of lymph nodes removed. It is different for each patient. And I just want to quickly talk about lumpectomy versus mastectomy. Lumpectomy is where we keep a portion of the breast. We take the cancer out and we leave the rest of the breast. Those women have to have a radiation to make it equal to a mastectomy. And there are different reasons why, but just because you have a lumpectomy doesn't mean you're going to do any worse than a woman who had a mastectomy. Large studies shows there's no survival difference as long as that woman who had a lumpectomy gets adequate treatment and they follow up with their radiation. It's supposed to be equal. Your survival difference is not different. So how we decide? How do we decide to keep the breast or how do we decide to do a mastectomy? If you have a small tumor, the tumor's not in multiple quadrants of the breast. When I do the surgery, I don't have cancer left behind. They're able to do radiation, or it's the patient's preference. Maybe the patient has a small cancer, but they still are very anxious and they want their breast removed. How to decide if they want a mastectomy? Well, if the patient's not gonna do radiation, or if they can't do radiation, or if they're gonna have difficulty with following up with me, if they have a cancer that's very large and is multiple quadrants, they may need to do a mastectomy. And this, you don't need to know anything on this slide except for we're doing less and less treatment in the armpit, and that means at the lymph nodes. The first place breast cancer can go to, an invasive breast cancer, it floats out of the breast and gets into the little channels into the lymph nodes. Once it gets to the lymph nodes, it can travel across the body. And so back in the day, everybody got the same thing. If you had a tumor, no matter how big your tumor was, we took your breast, we took every lymph node, women were very disfigured, and they had lymphedema. Their arm got very large from taking out those lymph nodes. In the 90s, instead of us taking every lymph node you had, we decided, hey, the first place this cancer will go to is a first draining lymph node. Let's just use some dye and see, does it mimic breast cancer? We figured out it did. So now in the operating room, when you're asleep for surgery with an invasive cancer, I inject blue dye or radioactivity, and I just follow that up and find the lymph nodes that mimic where the cancer would go. While you're asleep, I send it off to be tested, and if there's no cancer in it, I don't have to take the rest of your lymph nodes out. And even advancements past that, we are figuring out now that some of those women that we find the cancer cells in those lymph nodes, once we take those out, there's no reason to remove the rest of the lymph nodes. So just because you have breast cancer and just because you have an invasive breast cancer doesn't mean we have to remove every lymph node. We figured out it did not improve survival in certain women. And even radiation has changed. Radiation is not systemic therapy. That's chemotherapy, where it's actually going through the system. Radiation treats the chest wall, or where we were afraid cancer will come back in the lymph nodes, or the under the arm, or just the chest wall. So women who conserve their breasts, meaning I go in and do a lumpectomy, we have to add a radiation. We used to get it over 4 to 6 weeks. A woman would come in every day. It takes about 15, 20 minutes for 4 to 6 weeks. Then we got it down to certain women can get this partial breast radiation, where we put a little catheter in them. They come in twice a day for 1 week, and then they're done with their radiation. And now at Emory Midtown Hospital, and I think in Marietta, we have a machine that actually we can bring in while you're asleep for surgery. I used to do this all the time. Put the machine in after I've done the lumpectomy. You have your radiation, you get off the table, you're done with your treatment except for taking a pill. So radiation has even changed over the course of several years. Chemotherapy, the systemic treatment I was talking about, the medicine that goes in your system to prevent breast cancer from spreading around, can be given before or after surgery. Neoadjuvant means I give you chemo before I do surgery on you. We do that for big cancers. People who have lymph nodes, or if it's locally advanced, maybe their skin looks like an orange peel. The cancer is really aggressive. We give chemo before I even do your surgery. And then we give chemo after surgery, but not every patient gets chemotherapy. We have different tests that determine if you need chemotherapy. And I have to talk about this particular test, and I have to use the name. Sorry, I'm not endorsing them, but they are the ones that did the landmark study that revolutionized how we give chemo. So this particular test, Oncotype DX, is a genomic test that really analyzes the breast tissue, and it gives you a score. If you have a high risk for recurrence, you need to do chemo. If you have a low risk for recurrence, take the pill, you don't need chemotherapy. And if it's intermediate, we have a discussion on what you need to do. So as a result of doing this study, 70% of women with hormone-sensitive breast cancers did not need chemotherapy. So just because you have breast cancer does not mean you need chemo, okay? Endocrine therapy is what I was talking about, the anti-hormone. We give you a pill that helps block estrogen and progesterone from making your breast cancer grow. So women will have their surgery, they may or may not need chemo, and they take this pill for 5 to 10 years. We have great treatment for breast cancers in the year 2020. So just because you've been diagnosed with breast cancer does not mean you won't be treated, okay? The last thing I want to talk about is the importance of clinical trials. And they are vital to bringing new drugs to the market. And the reason why I'm stressing this is because I talked about the hormone-sensitive breast cancers and how you take the pill, but we don't know if it's as effective in a black woman just because those women weren't included in the trials. And so we figured out that black women, especially black men and black women, are not participating in clinical trials. There are some financial issues that are keeping us from doing it. We have transportation issues. The FDA may not require a specific number of minorities to be in clinical trials. And of course, we have a general mistrust, as we rightly should, of the medical community based upon past injustices. But after all that, the two main risk factors for not being included in the clinical trial is really people who look like me, the physicians, the researchers. We're not telling you all about the clinical trials. And if you don't have diversity in those researchers or doctors, you're more likely not to be included. They did a study in 2017 that said only 24% of African Americans had even heard that they were eligible for medical research. That's not good. And the importance of clinical trials, we want the medicines to be effective in people of color. So we have to look at not only the race, the ethnicity, the ages. We need multiple people to be in clinical trials because different products react differently in different people. So if we don't have African Americans, we're basing how this medicine works on European Americans, but not African Americans. So how do we know it's as effective? The thing I hear a lot from African Americans is they're not gonna give me real medicine. Y'all gonna give me water to treat my breast cancer. Okay, we don't do that, okay? We cannot do that. We don't wanna go to jail. You will receive standard treatment. You will receive the standard chemotherapy or whatever the standard treatment is. And if you happen to be randomly assigned to the actual new drug, you'll get that plus the new drug. So you're not gonna get fake treatment, okay? I just wanna stress that. You'll either get standard treatment or you get standard treatment plus the new medicine that we're testing. But it is a two-way street. The medical community has to do a better job of informing patients about clinical trials. I even have to make sure I remind myself to talk to this person about a clinical trial. I can't go in with the bias that, oh, this person's not gonna wanna participate, because if you give them the information, tell them the importance of it, they may want to be a part of the clinical trial. And then you bring the family in so that you can make an informed decision about your care. You have to advocate for yourself. If you want to be a part of a clinical trial, or even if you want to be a part of a clinical trial that's in a different facility and you feel bad about leaving your doctor for that reason, don't. You have the right to advocate for yourself to get proper treatment for your breast cancer. And so talks like this and this type of community faith-based place is very important. Like continued community engagement, working with cultural ambassadors like the health team here, being a part of this church like New Life, Having trusted leaders in the community like Pastor Harris is critical in educating the community on diseases like breast cancer that affect us disproportionately. So I want to stress, please do clinical trials if you get asked and ask about them. And I thank you so much for having me today, New Life.
Oh my goodness. In the voice of my one-year-old grandson, Dr. Robertson did an amazing job. I don't know if you're like me, but you're probably sitting there thinking, like, how can I go and see her? Like, how can I have a physician like her on my care team? One of the things, as I said, that I'm excited that I learned about her is her passion, and that definitely came through in her presentation today. I wanted to point out a few things that she said that stuck out to me. I know it was a lot of information, so the good thing is that this is recorded, so those of you out there watching, you could always go back and look at it again. But she said a few key things that I think that we need to underscore. One of the things she says is that basically you don't need to be a physician in order to know your breast. You need to be a specialist of your breast. So know your breast well enough to know that something has changed. That's simply it. The other thing that she said I thought that stuck out is that ignorance is not bliss. You need to check your breast regularly. We can't prevent breast cancer, at least not yet, but we can treat it if it's caught early. And treatment involves you knowing that something's wrong. So in other words, you need to know your breast that something has changed, and you need to take advantage of the screening tools that we now have, which is mammogram. Mammograms are still effective, and they save lives. And I think the last thing I want to underscore is that breast cancer does not equal death. She gave us some good news that even though women of color tend to die more, just because a woman gets breast cancer does not mean she's going to die. And so I'm just so grateful that she wet our whistle. Now, I don't want you guys to tune out because now we have the second part of our presentation, which is a discussion. And I want to bring into the conversation three ladies who have so graciously agreed to share with us their stories walking this road of breast cancer. First off, we have Miss Melanie Taylor. Melanie is a wife, a mom, a sister, a daughter, and an attorney here in Atlanta, and a breast cancer survivor. Next to her, we have Miss Joyce Latson. Miss Latson is actually a member of New Life Church here. She's a 12-year survivor of breast cancer. She has founded an organization, a nonprofit, that's called Women Helping Women, where she deals with empowering women here in the U.S. and abroad. And then last on our panel, last but certainly not least, is Miss Erica Weathers. Erica is a 2-time breast cancer survivor, and Erica has taken her story and used it to become an advocate. And hopefully part of our discussion will get into what advocacy is and look at some of the important work that she's doing that has helped paving the way for women to not only know about their breast cancers, but to be survivors like she's been fortunate to do. So without further ado, I want to have these ladies share a little bit of their stories with you in their own voices, and then we'll come back in for some conversation. So why don't we start with you, Melanie? Welcome.
Sure. Thanks, Sabrina. So I've always been a fighter and advocate for as long as I can remember. And in childhood, I was always the one who would speak to the teacher about some injustice that the class felt we experienced, usually too much homework or something else that now seems trivial. But I always enjoyed that position. I'm one of those people, my family said, you're going to be a lawyer because you like to argue and talk so much, and then I would argue that I don't like to argue. My sports of choice were kickboxing and martial arts. So that's always been part of my personality and what I love to do. And so lo and behold, I've been a civil defense attorney for 17 years, but I never dreamed that I would ever be fighting cancer. I never dreamt that that would be something that I would have to fight. It wasn't in my family history. I was always very active. I didn't smoke or drink. I had a mostly healthy diet except for Twizzlers. I have a weakness for Twizzlers. But other than that, a healthy diet. I I always went to all of my medical appointments. I was faithful in my annual physicals. So I was doing everything right and didn't think I had any exposure. I have to admit, I was one of the people that was not good about self-exams. So I was like, I don't know what I'm looking for. What am I doing? But other than that, I was always pretty good about, just keeping up with everything. And breast cancer was not on my mind at all. So 2 years ago, I turned 40, and my amazing husband threw this incredible surprise birthday party that for me was like another wedding. So we had friends and family coming in. We had tents in our backyard and flowers and balloons, jumpy house for the kids. I mean, it was amazing. I enjoyed my 40th, and I was like, this is wonderful. I brought it in with a bang, and that was April. In May, I did my obligatory Welcome to 40 mammogram. I had a doctor who told me to get it at 40. So I went in, and because I'm a guest here, you probably think that my mammogram was abnormal, but no, it was totally fine. So in May, I had a clear mammogram. I was like, all right, 40 is great. I've had this party. I'm clear with my mammogram. Work was going well. I was preparing for a trial, which is the most fun part of my job. So I was doing really well, and I was kickboxing regularly. And 2 months later, I had a really intense workout, and I had probably overdone it with the push-ups. And so I was just massaging my sore muscles. I was just aching, and I felt a lump, but I just had this workout, and I thought, I don't know, I'm not a doctor. I thought maybe I had a knot in my muscle or something, because I didn't have any pain from the lump. I didn't have any symptoms. I only found it because I was trying to massage the soreness from doing these push-ups. So I felt the lump, and I disregarded it probably another 2 months, and I had stopped. I just said, I'll take a break from my working out. I'll give it a break and recover from that. I continued on working and mommying and everything. And I didn't have any pain from the lump. I didn't have anything else. So I won't say I forgot about it, but I definitely didn't rush to the doctor or pay any attention to it until then, 2 months later now, October, this lump was still there. And admittedly, at my husband's urging, I called my doctor and just said, I think maybe I should come in. I've got this, maybe it's a cyst. Because at my mammogram, they had warned me that at my age, you might have things and what to do if you felt different lumps, and that it could be a cyst. So I self-diagnosed this thing. It must be a cyst. So I called my doctor. A nurse called me right away, and it's a nurse I've known for over 10 years, and she said, go right to a breast surgeon, because you're just wasting time coming to me. Go to a breast surgeon, and they'll look at it right away, and they'll know if it's something, and if it's a cyst, they can even drain it right there, but go ahead. So I went to a young female breast surgeon, and she was just what I needed, because right on the spot, she's like, I don't like the way this looks. And she did an ultrasound there, and she said, I still don't like the way it looks. Obviously, she took a sample to get it tested. But she had already warned me that I knew that she was not happy with what she saw. But what am I going to do? We went back home, went about my business, and waited for the results. And it was Halloween 2 years ago that she called me in the afternoon and gave me the diagnosis. And I, again, knew nothing. I hadn't had a family history. I took notes. I just created a file on my phone to write down all the stuff she told me. And from there, it was just a blur trying to get diagnosed and figure it out. And I did a lot of things that we'll talk about, and that you already heard from Dr. Robertson, as far as getting genetic testing and getting an oncotype test. But anyway, we scheduled pretty quickly to do a lumpectomy, and I did it knowing that it was possible that it would not work, but it was a good first try. So I did that. We couldn't get clean margins, and so then returned for a mastectomy, which is a whole nother story because we had a cruise that I really did not want to miss. And my doctor was like, she let me, it was not a very long cruise. It was like one of those 4-day ones. And we took the kids, and I've been looking forward to this for so long. And she's like, go on your cruise, and when you come back, you can do the surgery. And it seems like a little thing, but it was a really big deal, you know, for our family to be able to still enjoy that and have that vacation. And she assured me that the difference of 4 days was not going to be a problem. But I think the rest we'll probably talk about, but I had a mastectomy and then chemo and radiation. But just as far as what got me to the journey, that's what I wanted to share.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Melanie, for sharing that. You did such a good job. You answered all of the questions that I had. But I did want to clarify, from the time that you actually went to get treatment or to get it assessed to when you had your mastectomy, how much time passed?
So my diagnosis was Halloween, October 31st, and I had my first surgery November 7th.
Okay.
And then a few weeks later, November 21st, I had the mastectomy, and then I did chemo and radiation and reconstruction surgery. So I just finished my journey in February of this year.
Okay, so 2
So,
years.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you.
So next we're going to transition to Miss Joyce, and feel free to share a bit of your journey with us as well. Thank you.
Certainly. I'm going to use a cheat sheet because I've been 12 years cancer-free, thank God. And I'm a bit of a talker, and I wanted to honor the pastor and minister's bots by keeping with the time frame. So I jotted down a couple notes so that I won't go over too far. But I wanted to just talk a little bit about my journey and try to keep within the time frame and try to answer your questions as well that she gave me. But I moved to my dream city, Atlanta, in 2002, and I had retired. And I say it was my dream city because I used to come to Atlanta for all the social functions, the art fair, the jazz festivals, and I'm from Tampa, Florida. And I used to be able to go to the theater in Tampa and buy a ticket the night of the show. And our first introduction to Atlanta was we were trying to get theater tickets 2 weeks out, and they were sold out. And I thought, oh, this is different. You know, people are a lot like me here. So we were having to adjust our Florida ways to Atlanta ways. But it was my dream city. This was my dream church because my daughter was attending the church. And I liked the outreach. And so when we would visit her, we would actually go out feeding the homeless because that was the program she was on. So I said, I like that. And then our pastor, I said, he's kind of young, but he's good. So when I moved here, I already had my church. I bought my house. You know, my husband and I bought the house we wanted, a big house for family and friends because we have 3 adult children that are grown and gone, praise God. And I was living the life. I even started a ministry that had been in my heart for years. And my daddy had implanted in me when I was a little girl. He would tell me stories about Africa. I had 5 sisters, and there were 6 of us, and I was the one that kept it. You know, I kept thinking, surely I was a princess in Africa, and if I had lived there, I would have been a princess. And so that was I was really a very different kind of child. So I always thought I was an African princess. So when I got here, one of the things that I wanted to do, I love women because I have 5 sisters. So I looked around, and God had told me a long time ago to do this. And I said, Africa, really, God? I don't know anybody there. But you know, your arms are too short to box with God. I have a ministry since 2005 in Conakry, Guinea, West Africa, and we work with shelters here in Atlanta. And so it's a blessing. But in that dream I'm living, I was getting my mammograms every year. And every time I'd go, it would be I have to go back because I had fibrous tissues in my breast. So I thought, oh, no big deal. And usually I would go back and it was fine, but this time it wasn't. And I was healthy as a horse. The only time I was ever in the hospital was to have my daughter, who's in her 40s now. So I was like, I don't have cancer. I was in deep denial. And I tell you who did it for me. I mean, I'm a very strong woman. So my family had a tough time with me because I said, I don't have cancer. I have none of the risk factors. I'm fine. I mean, I was in deep denial. I'm a Christian woman, but I was in deep denial, you all. And that's what I wanted to share. So finally, my family, my husband, my daughter, my soon-to-be son-in-law were sitting in Dr. Rosberg Phillips' office. And I'm gonna tell you how I got there. And she had a talk with me and brought me to my reality. And so when she finished her talk with me, I said, okay, when do we start treatment? And I thank God for her, because she was a strong Black woman. She was strong, and I needed that. And my family was, you know, they loved me so much, they kind of let me do what I want to do, and they were kind of like, you'll be okay, but you know, you got to get some help. So I finally got the help I needed, and that was a strong Black woman. My doctor is a young woman. She's about the age of my daughter. And I said to her, when I went back to my primary care, I said, her mother, she has a mother my age. I said, who would you send your mother to? And she gave me, and that's why I had the best doctors in the world, because she treated me as if I was her mother. And that was a blessing from God for me. So I went in, I had the surgery, I had the chemo, it was about 1.5 years out of my life. And meanwhile, I have a ministry, okay? And I was trying to figure all that out. And, you know, my family said, you know, just be quiet. You know, that be still and know that I'm God kind of kept flashing in my brain. But honestly, I was more amazed at the women I saw in treatment. I was the oldest woman in the room. And I was telling, you know, some of the members on the panel today, I said, I was amazed that women would leave that chemo and go to work. You know, and there was a woman in there that was pregnant. I was just amazed. I mean, I would just sit there and say, God, you're amazing. So when I was in chemo, I said, what do you want me to do with this, God? You know, because I was like, okay, I got it. He said, minister. So whoever he sat me next to that day, I ministered to them. And it wasn't me, it was God, because I didn't know what to say to anybody. I'm no minister. But I try to do what he tells me, because I'm pretty hard-headed, and he's had to deal with me on a lot of issues. So I would just, talk to them, you know, and I remember one woman in particular, she would complain about her son and his wife. And she complained and complained and complained, and there was this young man that brought her to, because we were on the same schedule. So I would see her, and so I said, well, who is that handsome young man that brings you to chemo? She said, oh, that's my nephew. And I said, no, that's your son. I said, love him, appreciate, he loves you. I said, and your son, you pray for him, because if he's not paying attention to you, it's not your daughter-in-law's fault. He's to blame too. So don't worry about them, just pray for them. So those things God had me do, and so it kind of kept my mind off of it. And that's why I was very open about it, because I am very open, okay? I have 5 sisters.
That's one of the things.
And everybody had a different personality, so I love women. And God set it up for me to do what I do, because he gave everything I needed, you know, this voice, the experience of a father who instilled love, and my mother who gave us, you know, God. And so when I look back, that's the beauty of aging. You can look back and see God planning your life for you. So my journey, it wasn't easy, but it was my family, my faith, my friends, you know, and my stubbornness, because there were days that my chemo was pretty rough, and there were days I couldn't taste food, but I would eat because I wanted to live. I would look in my husband's eyes, and my daughter who lives here, I have a stepdaughter and a stepson in different states, but I would say, God, don't take me, because they would lose their minds, you know.
You know, Ms. Joyce,
so I would eat, and even when I couldn't taste food, and when I hear, you know, what the doctor said today about treatment options, I am so grateful to God of the treatment options, and I'm trying to stay on task. All right. So I was 61.
Okay, you were age 61.
All right, that was one of your questions.
What I was going to say is when you just summarized perfectly. When we get to the end, I want to bring you guys back to give some closing thoughts. And so I want you to go back to, well, I'll try to help you remember what you said before we transition to Erica. But one of the reasons I wanted to invite you to this panel is because you are so open. And we know, particularly you ladies who've been on this journey, you also know that what helps women get through is knowing that they do have sisters that have gone before them.
Yes.
And with that said, that brings us to Erica, our advocate on the panel, but also a breast cancer survivor ×2. So Erica, why don't you share with us a little bit about your story?
Yes, I'm 12 years survivor as well. I was first diagnosed in my early 30s, and then it came back towards the end of my 30s. So the first time, it was kind of found having dense breasts, and a boyfriend of mine saying it felt lumpy or something like that. So the first time I went into the doctor, there was 3 masses in there, like a big, a medium, and a small, and what they did was test the bigger mass, and it was not cancerous. So luckily, a year later, I went back to the doctor, and I had a new doctor. So the doctor just wanted to go in and retest everything again and make sure everything was still the same. And the smallest out of the 3 was the one that grew and came back testing as having the cancer. So it was ductal carcinoma. It was in the early stages, but it was a fast-growing cancer. It was ER/PR positive. So my recommendations were just because of the location of it, they said that I should get a mastectomy, because if the lumpectomy would have probably left me kind of deformed in the breast area. So I did that, and because of all of my other markings were at the right levels, I didn't get chemo, and I was not recommended to get radiation. I just was going to do the mastectomy and then get on hormonal therapy for 5 years. So I did that, went through that whole process, and did the reconstructive surgery and everything, and then I got on my hormonal therapy. But I only took it for 2 years because side effects that happened during, I mean, they weren't bad side effects, but I think, I felt like I was fine again. So I took it for the 2 years, and then, within that, usually they say your cancer comes back within that 5-year mark. So it came back in the 4-year mark after I stopped taking the tamoxifen for the 2 years.
Wow.
And it came back in the same breast. So I had a full mastectomy, but the cancer started growing back on top of the scar tissue almost from where they had sealed me up that first time.
Wow.
Because it was visible to me, I found it easily. And they tested it again, and it was the same cancer. So this time we did the whole reconstructive all over again. They took the cancer out, and this time they radiated me to make sure. And that's probably what they should have done the first time. But this was back in 2004, and like the doctor said, the evolution of technologies and treatments over the time, they learned things along the way. So since then, I went back on the tamoxifen to get my full 5 years in me that they recommend. I think that's almost turning into 10 years now, but I took the full 5. Got my reconstructive surgery, did the radiation this time, and then now I am 12 years cancer-free. So, when people always think that if you get a mastectomy, it's not going to come back, that's not true nowadays, because it's happening more often than not that I keep hearing women with mastectomies having their cancer come back. So during the process of doing all that, I started working with the Young Survivors Coalition when I went through my first bout. That was mostly for an organization for women under 40. So that really helped a lot because, you don't know anybody with cancer until you get cancer most times. There was no history of it in my family. There was cancer, but not breast cancer. And so it was really helpful for me just to be able to reach out and talk to people. So I started becoming a patient navigator through them to help other breast cancer survivors that needed someone to talk through their journey with them as well. And of course, it helped me as well. And I've always been a healthy person workout-wise, but I also was a smoker. I also was a drinker with alcoholic tendencies. You go out to the club on the weekend and you drink. And, I've always, I put my cancer journey on things that developed from when I was younger to those mutating cells turning and growing in my body over the years. Nobody knows how you get it, so you try to come up with your own plan, right? And, I'm writing a book about my journey now, so I try to tail back to, what was going on, the stresses in my life and the negativity and the divorce with parents and bad relationships and all of that stuff that mixes up to what's going on inside your body. I may look healthy on the outside, but who knows what was going on. So when people look at me, they never knew I had cancer until I tell them, because I didn't have to get the chemo. Even with radiation, you don't look different, So I started doing advocate work through Young Survivors Coalition. I started getting back into a workout mode. I stopped smoking, I stopped drinking. I'd have wine every once in a while. I got onto a really health kick where I was doing 5Ks, half marathons, sprint marathons, and then raising money for, different cancer survivors, just to give for research and stuff like that. And so I just took a turn for the better. So, you always say, why did this happen to me? But this happened for what's happening in my life now. I cleaned myself up. I'm on the right path and doing good things in my life and helping other people. Yes. So I'm also went up to the Hill last year with the National Coalition for Cancer Survivorship, because now that I am out of treatment, they don't look at us as there's nothing else that we can do for you. Yeah. So we're hoping that we can get some kind of program for survivorship. I still have to go for mammograms yearly. I still go for a breast MRI every 6 months to look in my mammogram, not my mammogram, my mastectomy breast. And, every year I go, they always see something suspicious, because I do have the breasts that are dense and I have 1 million cysts in there. Uh-huh. So this past year, I just went for my mammogram. It was clear. 6 months later, I went for my breast MRI. They didn't find anything in my implant, but they found something in my good breast, and that's what I call it, my good breast, because all I did was get a lift, But every year, or it seems to be lately, every year I have to go back and do an ultrasound. Yeah. This last year I had to do a biopsy, because all the cysts that I have in there, one of them, they think just exploded and particles went out, so they didn't know. So I got all these tags in this boob now, so every time that they do look at it, they can see, okay, that we saw, that was suspicious or whatever. So with that being said, I'm not in treatment, but we live with this every day. You walk right. We are cancer free, but we have to deal with it and hope that it doesn't come back. And there's nothing, mammograms are free, but my breast MRI, I pay, even with insurance, is a lot of money after the fact, And now I just lost my job, so I don't have insurance. So that's a whole nother issue in itself. So I'm just hoping that we can do something for people that are out of treatment and are surviving, and that they can come up with a plan to help, with all of these cancer. The coalition is great. We've been on the Hill and tried to get a survivorship bill. It's still out there. You know how bills go. Last year we were down with RX trying to get medical care and, diversity issues with just the Black community down at our capital here. Yeah. So it's great to be advocating for something that I know about and that I know would help myself, including continuing in the long run, and the people who are still going through it now.
As you guys all were talking, there were lots of questions, which reminds me, I was supposed to invite the audience that if you have questions, that there are experts that are waiting, both for your questions and comments. So be sure to put those into the chat boxes, whatever platform you're using to join the conversation today. But as we begin to, sort of bring this to a conclusion, one of the things that we have purposed for this health series is to deal with these disparities, as well as the term inequities, how there are sometimes policies as well as laws that allow access to certain groups that won't allow them to others. And so some of the things that Dr. Robertson talked about, some of our outcomes, some of the way that we're able to treat our disease, the clinical trials, the access to certain medications are not equally available. And so in terms of that, thinking about our audience out there, I think what I'm hearing coming out of this group is, for one, as women and as partners of people who are in relationship with women, that one, we need to be looking and be advocates for ourselves. I heard Ms. Joyce say that part of what made her go get treatment was because her family said, do this. With Melanie, Lon encouraged you to go, let's go and get this taken care of. I think, Dr. Robertson, you also talked about this whole idea of strong Black woman, of us women. I also often think, being a wife and a mom, being a daughter and a sister, that women, we carry a lot. And many times we are our least priority. And I thought about just how, I've never dealt with breast cancer. I've been able, fortunately, to walk with several women who do. And part of what I see coming out of them is this idea of the distress, not only of them needing to heal, but how is my disease going to affect those that I care about? And so I just wonder, shortly before we close, if either of you wanted to weigh in on what that was like for you to have to sort of deal with, I'm dealing with this, but what about them? So.
Yeah, I'll start. I definitely had that experience. And my pastor's wife actually had to talk to us because people in church wanted to make meals and send them. And I didn't want that. I said, everybody's got stuff going on. We're fine. And she's like, you have to let people help. And this is how they love on you. And it helps them also, because I wasn't thinking about what other people were going through. And, you know, they want to support it. So I think that is one definitely room for improvement, and that we can let people love on us, let them do that and show love in, you know, whatever way they want to. I continued working through all of my treatments. And I mean, fortunately I have a flexible job, so if I was super tired, I could work from home or go in later or something, but I did work throughout the treatment. So for me, that wasn't it wasn't a problem, though. It helped me get through, because my motto is, I want to get through this thing. I don't want to give it any more attention than it deserves. I have this, right. So I'm going to keep doing it. So that was one of the ways that I dealt with dealt with it on my journey, was just to keep my life as normal as possible. But I do think we need to do a better job about letting people
and other people help us.
Well, for us, I thought my grandmother had cancer, but it was a secret back in the day because of my age. And there were a lot of secrets in our community. And if you had cancer back then when my grandmother had it, something, you weren't as Christian, or you did something bad. So my sisters and I decided we weren't going to live that way. So we kind of made a vow to be very open and honest with our children and our family about life. I mean, life happens to everybody. So when I got breast cancer, my husband's one of 14, I'm one of 6. And we have thousands of nieces and nephews, lots of family, lots of friends. We know tons of people. So we went on the internet, and he actually journeyed he actually put it on the internet, my journey. Because we had so many calls, it was easier to just put it out there on the internet. And because of that, we've been very open about it. And I'm not in an organization because I have one and I'm real busy, but I get calls all the time. And there was a young lady at Morehouse School of Medicine, and we adopt children because we have grown children. And you feed them when they're in college, you own them. So the only thing we say, you come to church and I'll give you dinner on Sunday. So I have quite a few lawyers and doctors and a lot of good young folk in my life. But she's an anesthesiologist, and at the time she was going through medical training, her mom had cancer, breast cancer in another state. So I became friends with her, closer to her because of her mom. Her mom died, but that's how open I was about it. So people will call me and say, will you talk to my auntie? She's scared. So mine is very informal. In fact, I have a young lady right now, we do GED together, Zooming, of course. And she's out now because she has cancer, and she's young. And I said to her, I called her. I don't even know her because we have we had 2 different schedules in church. So there are people I don't know. I'm 11:30, I'm a night owl. So
but you still connect.
if you're a 9 o'clock person, I probably don't know you. But I knew her. She knew me enough to know that, that I worked with the GED program. So I told her, I said, you call me if you need anything. And so I've been on the email with her back and forth. So that's how we have to do it. We have to we have to be open about this thing, and we have to let people know that it's okay to ask for help and receive help. Because you have a lot of doctor's appointments, you have a lot of things you need, and trust me, it's not a secret. It's to me, the more you're able to be open about it, the better you feel about yourself, because the more I did that, the less I thought about my own cancer. Now, every year when I go for my diagnostic mammogram, I get nervous. And after it comes back safe, my husband and I celebrate. It doesn't, and when and she has it twice, and I'm going, I'm 12 years, and I still get nervous every time I get that diagnostic mammogram, okay? And I'm a good Christian, so it has nothing to do with your faith.
You're a good Christian. Erica.
I've always been open about it, and my mom was pretty much the basic one that was there for me. All my family is mostly in New York, and I was in Georgia, so it was my girlfriends that were around me. I didn't have a boyfriend at the time, so I let people help me because I was by myself. I don't have anybody that would, that I would be mothering to or trying to take care of anyway. But yeah, and that's why I think I am so open to helping other people. I just had a lady the other day that just called me, telling me through a friend of a friend, because I always tell people, if you need anybody, if anyone wants to ask me any questions, just call me or whatever. And I was going to go with her to her doctor on Friday, but she said she thought she'd be fine, and we talked afterwards and stuff. And you know, just helping people, especially she didn't have insurance either. You know, trying to get Medicaid through, you know, for women's cancer is really good too, because I do help them get through the process with all of the bills that come along with it. But yeah, I've always just been open with my whole journey. People don't know that. I mean, I'm not out there openly saying I have it, but if they know I have it, I always am open to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's awesome. Yeah, I see the benefit of a sisterhood, you know, of this knowing. And Dr. Robertson, before we close, I do want to bring you in to see what closing thoughts you have. One of the things that I wanted to circle back to, Erica, is just this whole idea of us being advocates. A lot of times, like Ms. Joyce mentioned, well, I'm not in a professional organization, but one of the things I've learned being in medicine and in public health is that individuals can be advocates.
Right.
It's just a matter of weighing in your voice to speak up about a void, to raise your voice against injustice, or to ask for what you need.
Right.
And one of the things that oftentimes people in our community, because of power structures that we're accustomed to in this country, we oftentimes won't exercise our voice. But you said something that really resonated. I promise you, you're my sister from another mother. To say to our patients that it's your life and you've got to fight for you. So when you're in that office, if you don't understand your diagnosis, you need to ask questions. If what you're being given you don't agree with, or your treatment you're not able to do, you need to say something. If something you don't like, get a second opinion, but exercise your voice because it's your life. And it's not all the time that your clinician doesn't care, but many times research has shown that for people of color, the kind of treatments that we get offered, our treatment options, sometimes don't occur to our clinicians because of this implicit bias that they have. And so our biggest help for us is knowledge, information, and feeling empowered to ask for what you need. Because everybody doesn't get it in a clinician like Dr. Robertson. So I want to bring you in before we close to see if you had any closing reminders for our audience. I know that your voice weighs heavily, but you've won my heart, ma'am, so.
Well, just a couple of things. One, I want to stress about the advocacy for yourself. I am a kidney cancer survivor. I'm a 2-year kidney, almost 2 years in December.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And so when I was told, well, 2 things. First of all, take time to grieve your cancer. It's okay. I got my diagnosis while I was in a busy breast clinic. I'm giving women their breast cancer diagnosis that day. I get called that I have cancer. Wow. I sat down in my office, I cried, put some water on my eyes, went out like nothing was wrong. Worked that whole day knowing I had cancer, but didn't tell anybody, and my patients weren't gonna know it because they had their own deals. That was crazy. I should have canceled clinic and gone home. But that's not what I do. God allowed me to get through that day, but you really need to take time for yourself and grieve your cancer. The advocacy part, for myself, someone told me, you got one tumor, you need to go get this type of surgery, I'm set you up with this person. I said, no, I kind of want to go over to, I won't say the hospital, but I want to go over there and see a uro-oncologist. I want an actual kidney cancer specialist that takes care of kidney cancer all the time. Because of going to see him, he actually repeated my imaging, found another cancer, which changed my entire operation. He found 2 more cancers, which made him think I had a genetic mutation, which I found out I have a genetic mutation, so I get followed more closely. If I hadn't taken that time to insist I get a second opinion, not that you have to get a second opinion, but I wanted to make sure I agreed with the first doctor, I would still be left with cancer now and not know I had a genetic mutation. So it's very important to advocate for yourself. The last thing I will say, and I like what she said about survivorship. Just because a woman has been diagnosed with cancer and has gone through her chemo, radiation is 12 years and 2 years out, doesn't mean she doesn't think about her cancer every day. No, it's not paralyzing her, but as the community or a family, you need to still understand that woman still may need support, not so much bringing her food to eat or calling her to say, but after the surgeries or after the treatment's done, usually people disappear. It's not a day that goes by that that woman is not looking at her incision, not looking at her reconstructed breast, not looking at where the radiation burned her, that she doesn't think of her cancer. So as a loved one or a friend, be cognizant of that and still check on them, still just see how they're doing, because women can have issues years down the line. And it doesn't take anything to trigger that. Getting your mammogram. For me, getting my MRI. When I go to the MRI, I get an MRI every 6 months. Getting your mammogram, getting your MRI. When you have to go into the doctor, don't say, well, you should be over it by now. Yes, they should have moved on, but it's a part of their lives forever. Once you get told you get cancer, you're not the same person after you've been told you had cancer.
Yeah.
You have changed forever. And we hope for the better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
And
you.
one quick
Well
thing
said.
that she said is to bring someone with you to the appointment, or in
Yes.
the days of COVID, have someone on the phone, just because there's so much information in these appointments and so much coming at you that it's good to have another set of ears there.
Plus, you're filtering it through emotions,
Yes.
and
Right.
oftentimes it's coloring. I have a close friend who has something suspicious now, and she said, when they call me on the phone, my ears were plugged up.
Yep.
And I thought that was a wonderful way to describe it. I didn't hear another thing she said after that. And I was just like, wow, that really captured what can happen, because it's traumatizing to hear that kind of stuff. And even though, like you said, we're people of faith, that fear can come in because you know the reality, not only that you may die, but the treatment, you know, the road to that, what are we dealing with? Yeah, it's a big unknown, and we know that, you know, as my sons would say, women are controlling, so we have trouble with the unknown, you know. So, but I think most human beings have trouble with the unknown. So, ladies, I want to give a heartfelt thank you to each of us, to each of you, for what you brought to the table. I specifically, though, want to thank you for your journey, because it's that you went through that has made you who you are. And so I invite you to continue to allow you to be you. There are people that have an assignment towards you, that who you are, the way you've been shaped through this trial and this triumph, they need you. So thank you, thank you, thank you for being sisters on this wall of all of our lives, but particularly for those who will walk down this journey. So continue to use your voice. Don't give up the fight. Keep fighting, keep fighting, keep fighting. Okay, thank you. So to our audience out there, thank you so much for having tuned in with us today. As I mentioned, there are experts who are waiting to answer your questions. We have a resource page that we've designed just for you on our website. So you may be tuning in through Facebook or through YouTube, but if you go to our website, newlife-atl.org, and if you click on What's Happening Now, I think is what it's called, then you'll see the page for this breast cancer program. And on there, we've specifically put links to different organizations for more information. Another thing that I want to say as I close is that for those of you out there who are uninsured or underinsured, in the state of Georgia, there is a statewide program called Breast Testing More through our public health centers, where you can get free testing for mammograms and cervical cancer screenings as well. So you want to get information about what's out there. If you are uninsured, there's still some resources for you, so don't give up. So again, thank you, ladies. A special thanks to our pastor, Pastor Marlin Harris, for his heart in being integrally involved in this programming, knowing that our community needs trusted information that comes from us that's specific for you. So we thank God for him. And then we want to give a special thanks to our sponsors, both the HEAL Collaborative and Amgen. So God bless you, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your day.